Okay, so let's talk about the meeting of the minds. When we talk about agreement, that's the first element of the contract. It's composed of offer and acceptance, right? And the offeror is the party who makes the offer. The offeree is the party who has the power to accept or reject. All right. So a valid offer requires intention to create a contract. But keep in mind, the intention is judged by the reasonable person, not the wants and desires of the offeror, right? So it's how a reasonable person would have perceived the actions by the offeror, right? Reasonably certain terms, which means we generally need to know what is being asked of, if something's being bought or sold, what is being sold and for what price, and communication to the offeree. All right, so those are the requirements of a valid offer. The general rule for offers is if you change your mind, you can revoke that offer at any point before it's accepted. All right. So the ways in which a party can revoke an offer: express repudiation, which is a fancy way of saying I revoke that offer. I don't want to. I change my mind. That's really all that means. Performance of acts inconsistent with the offer. So if I offer to sell you my jet ski and then actually sell my jet ski to someone else, well, that's inconsistent with the offer. That revokes it, right? Rejection. So the offerer says no. I don't want that. They then can't come back later. Or I should say the offeree says no, I don't want to buy your jet ski. They can't come back later and then accept. Rejections terminate. Rejections of an offer terminate the offer. And a counteroffer is also a rejection and a new offer. And when a counteroffer is made, the offeror becomes the offeree, and the process continues. There are some offers that cannot be revoked. Option contracts. All right. So these are contracts that really there are two contracts in an option contract. The option contract is typically for a sum of money. One party agrees to hold an offer open for a specific period of time. So if I'm looking at houses and I see the first house I like, I really want, the first house I see I really like, and I want the option to buy, I can tell the homeowner, or the homeowner that I'll give you $200 if you give me 72 hours, the exclusive right to buy this home for 72 hours. That's an option contract. Right? And at the end of 72 hours, I can either agree to buy the house or walk away, and the seller would get to keep the $200. Right? So an option contract, that's how that works. The other way a contract can be irrevocable is a unilateral contract where the party has already started to perform. Right? So you may remember the example I gave a few slides back where I sent my landscaper a text and asked him to cut my grass on Saturday. Well, if he showed up, he or she, the landscaper, showed up and started cutting the grass, I can't revoke it at that point in time. right? Because the work has already been substantially performed. He's made a substantial beginning. Acceptance. Acceptance must be unequivocal, which means you can only accept the offer presented, and it can't include additional terms at common law, and it must be communicated. So it can be communicated orally, it can be communicated in writing, email, fax, carrier pigeon, whatever happens to work. But you can only accept the offer presented. If you add new terms or change new terms, you're still negotiating. You haven't accepted. Silence does not constitute acceptance. So I can't send you an offer, saying if I'm a landscaper and I say I am in your neighborhood, I'll be cutting yards on Saturday. I'm going to cut your yard and bill you $50 unless you tell me not to do so. Well, that's a situation where silence would constitute acceptance, but you can't frame an offer that way. So if I ignore your offer and you cut my grass and then bill me the $50, I don't have to pay you because silence cannot constitute an acceptance. All right? And acceptances must be done in a timely manner. What does a timely manner mean? Well, it's reasonable depending upon the circumstances. We'll talk about the mailbox rule in class, but the short of the mailbox rule is that offers and acceptances are effective upon dispatch. So if I place a letter in the mail accepting an offer, I have a contract when I place that letter in the mailbox, not when it's actually delivered. Right? And we'll talk about why that matters in class. All right, e-contracts, and no doubt every single one of you has clicked on an agreement. But suffice it to say that click-on agreements are binding contracts, even though no one has ever actually read all that stuff that you have to read through to click I accept. You scroll through it, you click I accept. Well, guess what? All of that stuff that you didn't read is part of your contract, right? And e-contracts are valid. That's really what I want us to know from this slide. E-signatures. All right, and there are two pieces of federal legislation. You guys may not remember, but there used to be a point in time when if you used a credit card or debit card at a retail environment, point of sale, you had to sign a paper slip, usually in duplicate. You'd be given a copy, and the retailer would keep a copy. Now, you can do it electronically, right? And all e-sign and the Uniform Electronics Transactions Act, which is UETA, all they really do is treat electronic signatures the same as what we'll call wet signatures made by a pen and ink with your hand. All right? Electronic signatures have the same force of wet signatures, with some limited exceptions, wills, property deeds, for example. All right? Okay, so moving into consideration. What am I getting? What's my consideration? What do I get for contracting? That's what consideration is. All right, something of legally sufficient value must be given in exchange for the promise. All right, So what is that? Most commonly, a promise to do something that I don't already have to do. All right? Refraining from something that I have a legal right to do, called a forbearance. In other words, consideration is doing something I don't have to do, or not doing something I have a legal right to do. Now, I skipped over this middle bullet point. The action is one that I'm not otherwise obligated to undertake. Okay, this is best illustrated with an example. If a police officer, so let's say, heaven forbid, that a child goes missing, and concerned parents state that $10,000 to the person who's able to locate our child and return him or her safely. Well, a police officer does in fact locate the child and return the child. Well, guess what? They don't get the $10,000 because they already had an obligation to act in the public good. That's what police officers do. So that wouldn't be consideration. If you or I found the child and returned it, we would be eligible. That would be consideration. We could get the $10,000 reward. Police officer would not be able to do that. Bargain for exchange really is just another way of saying consideration. It's what I'm getting for contracting. All right. Agreements lacking consideration. The example with the police officer and the lost child that I just gave. That's a pre-existing duty. Cops already have a pre-existing duty to locate missing children. All right. Things that I've already contracted to do. So if I have an employment contract, and let's say I have a contract to teach a class at UC, and I decide that I'm not making enough money. UC needs to pay me more to teach the next class, and I communicate that to the decision makers at UC, and UC agrees to do so. Well, they're not going to have to pay me because that contract had no consideration. I already was under contract to teach, so there's no new consideration. I haven't done anything that I wasn't already contractually obligated to do.